AP Bio really helped me out, not because it was specific to anything I was doing, but just because Mrs. Anselmina really kicked our butts on making us put in the time to study. And having those skills going into college, it's really surprising to see how many people don't have those. And so just knowing how you learn and being able to study well and efficiently was super helpful.
All right, good.
I had to take up to Calc 3 at Pitt, so there was a lot of calculus in my degree. But AP Calc, yes, and then AP Chemistry with Mr. Brzeski.
All right, good, awesome. Did we hear from? I think we heard from everybody on that question, right? Good, excellent. All right, next question in the line is, and I'll paraphrase it a little bit. How common is it to major in either engineering or chemistry, say, but then get out into the field and not necessarily be an engineer or a chemist?
I'd say right away, it's kind of hard to deviate from an engineering job. You kind of have to work your way up to different jobs. Like you'd start out in some like testing job, and then you'd work your way up to management. But I mean, with an engineering degree, it's very valuable, and you can get so many jobs if you just apply to them. You never know who will accept it. Like I know, like investment banks, they take a lot of STEM majors. I think it's like 10% they take STEM majors for like analyst jobs. So you can really go anywhere with a STEM degree.
Yeah, I know quite a few people I've graduated with actually that are in med school now. Engineering, chemistry, biology, a lot of those have a lot of the prereqs that you need going into like med school or any other programs. But if med school is something you're considering, make sure that your advisor at college knows that right away so that they can help you schedule around that. And coming out of college, I had a weirdly difficult time finding a job for the first few months. They just weren't hiring when I graduated. I almost wound up going into a completely different career field. It was going to be more of a supply chain job, which is still in the realm of engineering, but more industrial engineering. But they basically said, they're like, well, we know you can do the math, we can teach you the rest. And so I think a lot, something that professors harped on when I was in school was, we're not teaching you to be engineers, we're teaching you to like be able to learn to be engineers. There's just so much you can do with engineering. They can't prepare you for a specific job. They're just making sure that you have the background to learn how to do the job when you're in it.
I know with environmental engineering, there's some people that graduate with a degree in engineering, and then they'll actually go on to become operators of water and wastewater systems, which they pretty much get paid equally anyway, until you start getting into like senior engineering level. But a lot of people just like getting more hands-on with what they're doing, and you know, they have the knowledge of how these things work, so it kind of makes sense for them. But yeah, I mean, even with that, you know, a lot of my professors said, you know, they teach you 10% of what you're going to need to do in the workforce, and then the other 90% you learn on the job anyway. So, I mean, it's all about just learning on the job, and if you have an engineering degree, you kind of show that you know how to learn on the job and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I definitely would say that whenever you graduate and move on to a job in the future, like not only can you like move on to management jobs and stuff like that once progressing up in the workforce, you can also do like sales. That's another big one that you can end up doing, because I know there's a lot of engineers who basically just know enough about the products and how things work so they can talk to clients and kind of get that relayed over. And I also know, like, in terms of other things that you can do in engineering, like mechanical engineering can be specialized into a lot of different types of fields as well. Obviously, they still have like a mechanical engineering background, but like if you're trying to go medical, you can do biomedical from mechanical engineering. And there's obviously other specifications that are more just like plain engineering, like aerospace and plastics engineering that you can get involved in. But know that there's a lot of other like specialties or different things you can be a part of, not just like one general engineering field.
Paul, from a more science perspective, less engineering perspective, do you find that being trained in a field of science gives you flexibility for careers as well, or do you feel like you're more locked into doing a specific thing?
Down the line, yes, not immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually, once you, definitely a graduate degree, a master's or PhD will help you get into these other opportunities. But I think if you do get into the master's or PhD range, there are a lot of people there's a lot of research opportunities teaching at the high school or collegiate level. And there's a lot of, we have seminars every Friday and we invite chemists in the field to come and present. And there's a lot of chemists who got master's or PhDs in chemistry that started their own business and just do their own, like a small business, and it turned really big, and they're businessmen now too, and they do chemistry as well there. So it does widen along the way.
Okay. So if I'm mirroring what everybody's saying here, it's, getting trained in a specific field doesn't lock you into the field, although maybe on graduation you're going to have less flexibility, but as you progress, you may find yourself in a very different place depending on where your circumstances take you. Cool. All right. So I'm gonna paraphrase the question slightly. There's a question from Amanda in terms of environmentally related careers. The specific question relates to environmental engineering itself, but in terms of opportunities in careers with an environmental kind of slant on things, and I know we can come at that from a lot of different angles depending on what type of engineer you are or what field of science you study. What's your opinions about what you see as the opportunities for people that are interested in environmentally related things within your sort of subset of your field?
I guess as one of the environmental engineers, I'll go. I definitely think there's, especially when you start out in college, if you know that you want to go into something that focuses on the environment, you can talk to professors. There's a lot of even undergraduate research that you can do that even if you're not necessarily considering going to grad school, like I did research as an undergrad. So if you find a professor that has environmental research that you're interested in, that's definitely something you can talk to them about, and you might be able to get into their lab and work with them. Going out into the workforce, it's definitely, I actually sort of stumbled into environmental engineering. I wasn't quite sure where I wanted to go, but my first job was in environmental engineering, and then this opportunity came up because I had a background in environmental engineering, and so it's been something I always sort of had an appreciation for, but I did get kind of lucky in a sense. But if it's something you know from the outset you want to go into, you can definitely do things in college to set yourself up for it.
I think looking at it from, and I guess you kind of have to separate out, the heavy civil side of environmental engineering and more so environmental remediation side. Looking at it from a heavy civil side, if you look at the infrastructure of the country, it's not good and it's failing. And so you need engineers to be able to go in and design, new treatment and conveyance techniques and everything for these failing systems. And I think that's an ever expanding field, and you're always going to need people to do that work. Specifically from a remediation standpoint, if you're looking at like brownfields and Superfund sites, which I don't know if high school students might not know what that is. But they're just
give like a 30 second synopsis of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately just a heavily contaminated site. I guess that's the best synopsis I could give. There's more to it, but that's about it. If you're looking at that, that's more of a specialized field, and there's probably, I don't want to say there's less opportunities with that, but there's probably less companies that focus on that, and you might want to specialize your education towards that. But even that's an ever expanding field, I think, and I think anything environmental wise is going to be a good career choice moving forward, especially as we look to become more sustainable in design and engineering. Even mechanical and electrical engineers, an environmental background is still, I think, almost necessary to have with an education.
Yeah, and piggybacking off of that, even if like the job you're doing specifically doesn't always feel like it's something that's helping. Engineering and science in general are just so far reaching. Like the amount of effort that it goes to like into just getting light to your light bulb or getting water to your house, like even if you're just designing valves all day, those valves are being used to serve an important purpose. And so like there are different ways to contribute that might not necessarily be like being on the ground in the ditches, cleaning everything out. Like you can affect the world around you in a lot of different ways.
Awesome. Thanks. I'm gonna blend two questions together. The one question asks in terms of like other special tools that you guys might be using to help you do calculations, like when you're doing the work. Like are there extra programs or things that you use to assist you with challenging calculations? And then I think related to it as well, in terms of other tools and resources available to you. There's another student that asked in terms of foreign languages. Like, are there any, do you find a background in certain foreign languages is also helpful for you too? So I'll frame this question as, are there resources that you can think of that help you do your job, but that maybe wouldn't necessarily be classified as, as an education, but skills that assist you sort of outside the realm of just your content knowledge? How about we frame it that way? Anything that you think helps you do your job.
I really like,
Sorry.
For like big calculations, I really like using like online calculators like Symbolab. And if you're graphing anything like for, I don't know, calculus or differential equations, Desmos is a very helpful tool.
Now, is that a free online tool, or is it?
Yeah, it's an online graphing calculator.
All right. Does it have the same sort of capacity like one of those TI-84s will have, or is it like a mega version of that or something? Is it?
But it's real easy to use. You can have whatever function you want.
Right.
It's pretty.
Can you spell it for our kids if they wanted to write down what is it called again? It's a
DESMOS. That's the graphing calculator.
Desmos.
And Symbolab, SYMBOLAB. That's the calculator I like using.
Okay. All right. Good resources. Anybody else have a resource or extra, foreign language or technology or anything that helps them do their job better?
Lots of Excel. Microsoft Excel, lots of that. Just get very acclimated to using it, and it's the tools it has in it, graphing.
So, and Paul, I'm going to say something a little polarizing here, but do you feel that Excel is far superior to Google Sheets? Our kids are probably familiar with Google Sheets for the most part.
I like Excel for like using it alone, but I like Google Sheets when collaborating with someone.
All right. Okay, good.
Yeah.
For purposes.
My old company was trying to transition to using Google Sheets over Excel. Pretty much any engineer in the field right now, I think, would question that decision, but it is definitely good for collaboration. It has almost the same capabilities, aside from a few things that I'm pretty sure Excel copyrighted. So, but yeah, other than that, and speaking to the foreign language skills, I speak passable Spanish at this point.
Say something in Spanish, Macy.
What do you want?
I don't know. Say something.
I forget words.
Compliment Chad's tie in Spanish.
Tu corbata es muy bonita. That was really bad too. Everybody in Spanish classes right now, please don't tell. Actually, I don't even remember what Senorita Connolly's married name is, so it doesn't matter. But I would say like any sort of like something that would be considered more of a soft skill in general, it's always going to be useful somewhere in life. It's been shown that people that speak multiple languages have better reasoning skills in some scenarios. Communication in general, especially writing, engineers are historically bad at. So anything you can do in those sort of fields to broaden your abilities is great. I've definitely seen a lot of cases where people miscommunicated on a project and it delayed us by weeks, months. And so it's important to make sure you have the soft skills too.
Awesome, thanks. Anybody else want to contribute to that, to potential outside of content skills that are useful for what you do?
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback a little off of Josh.
So Chad's gonna put a pitch in for juggling right now.
Juggling. He mentioned Desmos. I've used that. It's really helpful. Another good thing about Desmos is that you can put in like equations, and you can use that to solve them out, like, and be able to use them to kind of check your work as you go. So instead of you doing it on a calculator and possibly messing up somewhere along the way, it just automatically recalculates it, and you can assign it to variables. So it's really helpful to do that as well. Also, make sure you have a powerful calculator. I'd say, like, if you're in engineering, TI-84 is like the minimum, is like you should go from there or up. And if you really want to go out and beyond, get like a TI Inspire CX CAS. Those are really good because you can do all kinds of calculus functions. You can do a lot with matrices, which will come in later in engineering, which are helpful. So if you want a calculator, you know, if you're going to buy one, I would just buy the TI Inspire CX CAS because it's only like maybe $40 more expensive than a TI-84, and you have so much more that you can use with it. So I'd just suggest get that, or if you have a TI-84, that'll be fine as long as you know how to use it really well. Just get used to using the calculators and different tools you have available, and you know, it'll help you a lot in engineering, especially when you get into like harder classes like statics and dynamics, where you got to do a ton of calculations and possibly like solve some matrices. So
yeah, not to chime in again, but I second the TI Inspire. You're not going to be allowed to use it in calculus or anything, but for your like more advanced classes, you can use it on exams depending on your professor, and it saved me so much time having a calculator that would do the calculus for me.
And I think if there's anything that maybe the last month or two taught everybody is just understanding how to learn how to use software like this. You know, not even in a situation that we're in now, but just in general. I mean, it's a lot better for you to share information with a client electronically than driving up to them, you know, spending thousands of dollars in a day just to tell them, you know, one thing, when you can just do something like this and you know, electronically transfer files or something. I mean, so much of at least my job is honestly customer service and developing relationships with clients. You know, if you're able to save them $1,000 and delegate that somewhere else, that's, you know, that goes a long way in not only that relationship, but, you know, getting projects and helping your business even further.
Awesome. I'll wrap up with this question. I would say, what is the one thing that people assume about your career or your field of study that you wish people wouldn't assume? How's that? What do they when they hear what you do? What is the one thing that they assume that you wish that they didn't?
I guess I could say for this question, anytime you ever tell someone you're an engineer, usually they come back with, "Oh, you must be smart," or like questions or like things like that. That kind of drives me crazy because I don't know. This is more of just a opinion more than anything. Is no matter what field you're doing, consider yourself like good at what you do. Like you have a specific talent, and just like in engineering, you know, maybe you're good at math or science. That doesn't mean you can't be good at something else. So whenever, you know, if someone like responds with something like that, just know that like everyone has their own specialties and skills, and you know, that means a lot and it can go a long way, but kind of developing and honing those is important. But yeah.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off that. Like if you tell somebody you're an engineer, people kind of assume your brain's a supercomputer and they assume you're not faulty for anything. So if they ask you like some technical question, then if you can't answer it, they're like, "Oh, come on, you're an engineer." And I just think it's really important to know that you can be faulty and you can still succeed as an engineer. Like you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. Yeah. I don't like that assumption.
Assumptions. Come on, Paul. You're a chemist graduate student. I could think of People probably make Breaking Bad jokes around you all the time
A
and stuff
lot.
like that.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's like anything Breaking Bad. They don't watch Breaking Bad, but it's like Breaking Bad-esque. Same thing, like, you must be smart stuff.
Well, what about in terms of like when people hear you go to grad school, Paul? What do they assume about you that's not
My
necessarily
grandma
true?
thinks I'm curing cancer right now, so I don't know. They don't understand like that chemistry is like pretty much everything we do, and it's everything. It's everything. So like it could be it has such a large range. Like I'm doing electronic cigarette research, which is kind of not what anyone would think immediately when they say chemistry, but it's definitely a field of chemistry, and there's chemistry in it.
And then very briefly, Paul, if you have a moment after we're done with this, do you want to share a little bit about your research with about the e-cigs, like the kind of stuff you're finding? Let me get through Macy and Matt too, but I think there's a little bit of interest too in terms of like learning a little bit more about some of your e-cig research. So Matt, Macy, any other opinions as far as assumptions people make about you?
At least as a civil engineer, the common assumption is, that we're building bridges and other structures like that, where, everything that I do is pretty much underground. So you never get to see, what's designed. I guess that's the biggest thing. And then I guess kind of going off what was already said before, people think that because you're an engineer, you can, design something in a day and for $100, but it takes months and months of research and collaboration with, other engineers and people that are actually going to operate these things. And, it's a long, difficult process, and, engineers aren't superheroes, I guess.
Yeah, I guess to me, it's just like, even I said it before, there are a lot of engineering stereotypes, and the not being able to write well being one of them. But this general stereotype being someone that can't talk to other people, who's shy and nerdy, and insert any negative thing you want there. I don't consider nerdy a negative, but you're going to meet a whole wide range of people in college that are studying the same thing you are. And like, yeah, sure, the stereotypes are in some cases very true. I have peer-reviewed papers that made me want to cry and run back to high school. But like, there's definitely no box that you can fit engineers or science majors or anybody in. Everybody's going to branch out and not fit all the molds, I guess.
Awesome. Well, that's some great advice. And again, Paul, I'll give you 1 minute here to can you summarize for as a public health announcement? Can you summarize like a 1 minute synopsis of what you're finding out about e-cigs, just in case there's anybody in the audience that feels that e-cigs or vaping is the cool alternative to smoking? Do you want to summarize a little bit about what you're learning?
And shortly, some background. Many people consider them as a less dangerous option to smoking cigarettes, but in the research in the past and in my lab have found that when you vape the e-liquid, which is primarily propylene glycol and glycerol, which we generally call PG and GL for short, and when you vape that, you are forming formaldehydes, a lot of formaldehyde, acrolein, acetaldehyde, and other aldehydes, and these hemiacetals, that you're breathing in your lungs. And the three of interest, I apologize. The formaldehyde and the acetaldehyde are probable carcinogens, which are in your lungs then. And then there's the hemiacetals, which are a reaction between the propylene glycol or glycerol and formaldehyde. And that forms these hemiacetals, which are quite stable until they get in your lungs. And since they're at equilibrium, the equation can be reversed, and it's forming more formaldehyde in your lungs then. So and then future research showed that after that, they found that when you add flavorants to your e-liquid, so some sucralose specifically to sweeten it, you are actually the formation of these aldehydes is increasing. So you're getting more formaldehyde in your lungs when you're vaping it then. And after what I'm working in now, that's where that's the research I piggybacked off of. I am studying how sour e-liquids that contain acids specifically affect the degradation of the e-liquid upon vaping.
So in short, if somebody was to ask you if e-cigs are a healthier alternative to regular cigarettes, you would argue that there is
less dangerous.
Yes, it is less dangerous, but like less dangerous like riding a motorcycle in, like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a metaphor, like it's not undangerous, it's just less dangerous, right? It's like
yes.
I mean, but it's not a safe choice.
There's a lot of people just say like it's water vapor. It's not water vapor you're breathing in. So less dangerous is a way of putting it. Yeah.
So juggling smaller knives instead of larger knives, basically.
Yeah, you can say that.
Speaking of which, Chad, juggle.
Do knives.
Yeah.
All right. There's been a couple messages again from the students thanking you guys for your time. I echo the same thing. We know a lot of you guys took time away from your professional schedule or your studies to be here. We do appreciate that. And again, if anybody in the chat room has a question that they want to follow up on, email me and let me know who you wanted to address the question to, and I can absolutely forward that to them. To our speakers, on behalf of the Norman School District, we absolutely do appreciate your time. You guys are awesome representatives and ambassadors of what you can do upon graduation, and we look forward to hearing more about what you guys are able to accomplish as you continue on.
Oh yeah.
They're waiting for the end credit scene right now, or something like that. They're waiting for the
Marvel end credit scene
where we reveal the next villain of season 3 or something like that. It's
yeah.
They just want to see you juggle some more before they leave. Show them the factory. Show them the factory.
Show them the factory.
Show them the assembly line.
Okay. Let's see if I can. Oh no. Lost it. I got it.
There it is. Nice. It's a little hard to tell. It lags a little bit on the
yeah.
on the
I'm sure it's not like very ideal.